back, everyone, to the Resiliency Class. I'm your instructor, Esmeralda, and in today's session, we're going to be talking about something that can make a huge difference in your resilience, and that is the people that are around you. So today's session is focused on how to increase your resilience through support from others. But before we start, I am wondering, how did it go with the last session? After last session, did you start to challenge those harmful thoughts using the catch it, check it, and change it method? I really hope that you guys were able to change some harmful thoughts into helpful thoughts and that you're starting to notice, improvements to your mood. So leave some comments below. Let me know, what thoughts you caught yourself having and how you changed them and how it made you feel. Okay, let's get started with today's topic. So, here's a truth that might actually surprise you. Your relationships have a direct impact on your mood and your ability to bounce back from life's challenges. Surprise, right? When you have positive interactions with people, you are more likely to feel resilient, right? And having people in our lives and our surroundings is so important, right? That's why today's focus is all about our social support network and the people around us. And so, as you can see here, there's a direct correlation between your mood and the interactions you have with people and your resilience. And so, when those interactions with others are negative or they're just missing altogether, like if you're maybe isolating yourself and not really surrounding yourself with anybody on a daily basis, it can be really hard to stay strong in those times. And so I want you to think about what happens when your mood is low. You might have less contact with others. You might avoid being around other people when you're feeling a little down or depressed. You may be more irritable. You might find yourself having more conflict or tension with others. You may feel more uncomfortable being around other people. It's very common for people to act much quieter, less talkative when they're feeling down. You may also be just more sensitive to being ignored or criticized or rejected by others. And this really ultimately causes you to trust other people less than you normally would. And these are all, symptoms and signs of, yeah, somebody that's going through maybe a depression, or maybe you're having some, anxiety and just your mood is not where you want it to be. So this creates a negative downward cycle and spiral where when you have less contacts with other people, you might, feel more alone. You might feel sad, angry, like no one cares, right? And, you ultimately find yourself feeling really stressed and really unhappy. And so we want to break out of that cycle, right? That's why you're here. That's why you're taking this class. And so we want to be able to challenge the way that we allow our mood to affect our relationships with other people. But on the flip side, when your interactions are positive, the opposite can happen, right? Where if you're having better connections with people, this leads you to have an improved mood, which leads you to have even more positive interactions with others. And so it's kind of like this compounding effect, right? For your emotional well-being. The more you interact positively with others, the better you feel, and the better you feel, the more likely you are to want to be around other people and have those pleasant interactions, right? So, this is why today I'm going to talk to you about the importance of strengthening your social support network, because your resilience and your social support network is made up of the people who are near you, such as your family, your friends, neighbors, coworkers, even your healthcare providers, or maybe if you already have like a therapist or a social worker, somebody that you talk to regularly, maybe a pastor or priest, or whatever your faith is, you might already have a trusted confidant, somebody that you can talk to in your social support network. And so I want you to think about, who are your supporters? What type of support do you find yourself needing right now in these moments that maybe you're not receiving help for? Who do you need help from? What type of support do you need? And ask yourself, have I openly and honestly asked for the type of help that I need? What would I say if I were to ask somebody to help me? What does that look like for me? What words would I use? How would I approach someone to ask for help? And what other resources are available to you? What other sources of support are around you that you could go and seek help? So these are just some questions that you can start to think about and ask yourself as you explore your social support network and how to strengthen it. So I want to talk to you about four types of support. And so you can see here I have a little quadrant with four different types of support, and I'm going to do a deep dive into every one. So if you haven't already clicked on the link in the description, you should be able to download the PDF of the manual for today's session. You'll find a little sheet there that you can fill out, or if you want to pause the video and just grab a piece of paper where you can quickly write down these four categories and you can start to fill in, some of the names of people that fit into some of these different categories of support. So the first one is, practical support. And so this is the type of support where somebody is around that can help you with everyday things, right? Maybe somebody that can give you a ride, or if you were to be moving from your old apartment or old house to a new house, this is somebody that you could just call and say, hey, bud, or hey, sis, I need your help. And these people would be there, in an instant to come and help you. Maybe there's someone who can help you get to the pharmacy to pick up medication, right? Just those everyday practical things that we all need help with from time to time. I want you to ask yourself, who supports me in these practical ways? And then who do I support with these types of tasks? Maybe there's people that come to you to ask you for day-to-day help. And so I want you to just think about those names and write those down in the worksheet. The next type of support is around advice or information. So, who gives you good guidance when you need it? Who do you ask for advice about, where you can seek help for maybe a problem that you're having? Who is that person, or who are those people that are just really good for information sharing or good advice? And so again, ask yourself, who supports me? And then who do you support in that area of advice and information? So write down those names. And then the third category, or the third type of social support, is companionship. And so this is, who do you enjoy spending time with? Who is good company for you? Maybe who helps prepare meals in your home and then sits down and eats with you, right? Like who's just that buddy, that friend? Maybe it's a spouse or a parent, a grandparent, a cousin, a friend, anybody who's in your circle that you just find to be such good, companionship. Go ahead and write down those names. And then the fourth type of support is emotional support. And so here you want to write down, who is that person that listens to you when you need to share your feelings? Who do you share your concerns with about your struggles? Who's your confidant, right? That person that cares about you deeply and is always there to support you emotionally. So, again, who supports you in this area, and then who do you support? And so it's really important as you all, fill out these four quadrants of support that you aim to have balance in your resiliency support network, right? So after you complete the squares, I want you to stop and think, what do you notice? How many people did you think of? What areas do you have a lot of support in? And maybe, are there areas where you didn't have any support or maybe not enough support? So really think about what are those areas in which you could be getting more help. Maybe you noticed that you wrote down a specific name a lot, right? Maybe there was like one person that supports you in every area, multiple categories, right? That's okay if there's somebody that is just trustworthy and reliable and that you go to for help. But maybe ask yourself, are you relying too much on that one person, right? We can sometimes fail to see that we might be overburdening someone if we're constantly going to them for support in every aspects of our life, right? Maybe that person is your spouse, a parent or a friend. It's good to have your support, but you want to make sure that it's balanced and that it's spread out across different types of people, right? Like they say, you don't want to keep all of your eggs in one basket, right? You want to spread it around, make sure that, you're not overwhelming one certain person in your life. Because think about how that person feels, right? Every time we come to them for all of our problems or all of our issues, it can get pretty tiring, right? And then look for the gaps. Maybe you noticed that there was an area where you don't have any support, and maybe, it could be in the companionship box or maybe the emotional support. That's something that you can start looking towards working on, right? Identifying like who are some of the people that I might be able to come to ask for that type of support. So remember that also support goes both ways, right? Just the way that people support us, we also want to be supportive of others, right? So um, it's really important that you be giving, right? That you offer up your time and your energy to help others. But it is important also to be a little bit careful when it comes to giving and helping and supporting others, because the sad reality is that, sometimes there are people who can take advantage of others that are kind and giving, right? And that's also not fair. So if you're a person that's just always very willing to help out and giving and generous and kind, don't change who you are at the core, but just be aware, if you notice any certain patterns with maybe relatives or friends or coworkers who might just be taking advantage of your kindness, so that you're able to just set some healthy boundaries and be cautious, right? That you're not being taken advantage of. So all of this boils down to having balance, you guys. And again, giving support to others, receiving support, right? Because we're all deserving and worthy of receiving help from others. There's no shame in asking for help when you need it, in seeking support, right? There's a lot of really caring and loving, good-hearted people out there that are willing to help, and all you have to do is ask, right? So don't be afraid to ask, don't be shy. The worst thing that can happen is somebody says, "No, I can't," and that's okay. You move on. And next week, we're going to be talking about communication, which is really key when it comes to this topic about, asking for support. So stick around for the next session where we're going to talk about, assertive communication. It's going to be a really good one. So here's the assignment that I want you guys to take away from today's session is to take an honest look at your support network and, ask yourself, where do I have a lot of support? Where do I need more support? And don't forget to ask yourself, am I asking for the help that I need when I need it? right? Sometimes people want to help us, they just don't know how, right? We need to tell them how to help us. And sometimes if you don't need help, maybe you just want somebody to hear you out and listen to you and allow you to vent. Let them know that too, right? Say, hey, I don't need your help with this. I don't need you to fix this. I just need someone to hear me out and let me get this off my chest. And that becomes your emotional support person, right? Um, so this is especially important in our homes, at our jobs, in our community where we spend the majority of our time, right? You have to really be willing to ask for help. And then if you're struggling to ask for help, think about what's getting in your way of asking for support. Maybe you're having some harmful thoughts, like we talked about in the first few sessions. Um, you know, Maybe there's a certain pattern of harmful thinking that you're falling into, and so start to again analyze those thoughts and ask yourself, okay, is this true? What's keeping me from asking for the help that I need and that I deserve? And so make sure you're communicating your needs to the people that love you, those that are in your community. Like I said, you would be surprised how many people are willing to help. And sometimes they're complete strangers. Sometimes people out in the street might be sometimes more helpful and kind and willing to give us a helping hand, even more so than the people in our immediate circle. So, don't be afraid to ask for help. The worst thing they can say is no, but then you just move on. You move on to the next person or the next thing. And so I want you to walk away today from today's lesson knowing that building positive relationships with others can help improve your mood. It has a direct connection to the way that you feel. And it doesn't mean that you have to be everyone's best friend. We can't be everything to everybody. But having some really good people in your social support network that you can connect with really can make all of the difference. So, uh, I want you to go ahead and look at that this week and write down all of the names of the people that support you. Who do you support? And try to see if you need to make some changes, rearrange things a little bit so that your support network is a little bit more balanced, okay? Remember that you don't have to face life's challenges all by yourself. You're not alone. Building and maintaining good relationships is one of the best investments that you can make in your own resilience. So please be intentional about, who you allow into your circle, quality versus quantity. Some of us like to have a lot of people around us all the time, but those people are not always those quality, support people. They don't fall into those categories of, emotional support, practical support, um, you know, uh, good companionship. So just make sure that you have key people that are meaningful and important in your life in those categories. Uh, so for today's key takeaways and messages, I talked to you about the fact that healthy interactions with people can help make your mood better. You can choose who you spend time with, right? Which people have a positive effect on your mood. Make sure that you are surrounding yourself with those positive people and maybe try to avoid interactions with people that bring your mood down. Maybe there's some toxic, unhealthy people in your lives that you really need to try to set some boundaries with and maybe don't spend as much time around them if you know that they can negatively affect your mood. You can start to build a balanced social support network that includes people that give you practical support, advice, emotional support, and, companionship, those four categories that I talked about. And, also take a look at who are you supporting and are you maybe overextending yourself when it comes to supporting others? Maybe there's a lot of people that rely on you, maybe a little too much, and you need to set a few boundaries. Maybe start saying no when people come to you for help if you feel like you're giving a little too much, more than what you're actually receiving, right? So I hope you guys find that helpful. If you did find today's session helpful, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so that you can get updates on the new videos that I will be posting each week. And if you know somebody that would benefit from this information, please share it with them. Sharing is caring, like they say. And so if you have a friend or a loved one that is maybe lonely or struggling with their mood, please share this with them. I hope that they will watch the series, all of the videos in the class, and that they will find it helpful. So I look forward to having you guys join session 5, where we'll be discussing one of my favorite topics, which is practicing good communication. I love communicating with people and I love meeting new people. So I have found this lesson to be so helpful. We're going to be talking about how good communication can increase your resilience. So we'll be talking about different styles of communication, your rights to, the rights that you have as an individual to ask for what you need and express yourself. So good communication is the topic for next week. Until then, I hope you all have a good week. Take care of yourselves and talk to you soon. Take care. Bye bye.